sourced a door hinge to a Korean company. And they got 10% of the business of the K-body door hinges. And after the car was in service, the door hinges cracked on the Korean-built hinges. And the reason that 10% went to the Korean source was so they could use that price to beat down all the American sources. You know, they could show them that, look, this is what we get in Korea. Anyway, this is the true story. The door hinges cracked on the Korean door hinges. So we had to campaign in the field. And fortunately, all these things are identified so you can tell if they're Korean door hinge or not. So we told the management, we have to campaign in the field and change the door hinges on all the cars in the Korean door hinges. And they said, well, what happens if we don't do it? And we said, the doors will fall off. They said, we'll do it. And so then we sent a task force over to find out why. And the Koreans had changed the steel from a high strength steel to cold rolled steel. Well, he said, oh my God, that material doesn't meet the material specifications. Why did you do that? They said, well, we tried the high strength steel, but it was too hard on our tools. So they arbitrarily changed it.
Yeah, okay, interesting.
But that was all part of a strategy to try to get American prices down.
Sure.
Now, I hope that the supplier and the industry worked like that together, but they didn't then. I don't know if they do now or not.
Burt, were you involved the decision to phase out the Hemi engine after 1958?
No. The basic reason was it was too expensive. Well, there was a lot of pressure on getting costs out, but when I came through the Institute in 1951, 50, 49, 50, 51, we had up here that a car and an engine are together. In other words, a Plymouth has a Plymouth engine, a Dodge has a Dodge engine, a Chrysler has a Chrysler engine. That's the way the world is. That's what we thought it was. So we did a new Red Ram Dodge, and we did a new Firefly DeSoto, and we did a new Fire Dome Chrysler, all different, 3 different sizes. And the only part they shared was the hydraulic tapping. All the push rods, the rocker arms, the camshaft, the valves, everything was different. Anyway, along comes the B engine. We found out we were wrong. That the customer really doesn't care whether all he wants is a good engine that runs the car. He doesn't care whether it's the same engine in a Plymouth or the same engine in a Dodge. So part of that was to get rid of the the complexity of 3 different sizes of engines, and also part of it was to get a lower cost kind of engine than a hemispherical combustion chamber. So that was a very good combustion chamber, but of course it was more expensive when valves weren't in line, when you had to machine the combustion chamber, it all was more expensive.
You know what's interesting about that? It just came up, we say, the 318, which went on, the wide 318, that started as the Plymouth, right? The 277, you know, and there were many other engines, right?
The A engine.
The A engine, well, the wide A. Why did that win?
American Motors car?
No, the Plymouth engine. The 318 cubic engine.
Oh, 318, yeah.
Why that one?
Well, that was a cheap engine for a cheap car.
What's the cheap car? Good engine.
What's that?
It was a pretty good engine.
Yeah.
But
atmosphere and all that stuff too. It's like still probably all of us in the room don't have a clear picture of what went on there, 56, 57.
Well, I think probably the 318 engine was the time when we were starting to get smart, that maybe having a unique engine in every car line
Yeah.
wasn't necessary.
Let me ask you about, about Vicki Wood. Were you in Daytona in '55
Yes.
when Vicki set her land speed record? Were you coordinating the engineering
You
efforts?
know, I had the most wonderful experience at Daytona because in '54, I gotta tell you, I came from DeSoto. I was 2 years at DeSoto, and I always say I'm one of the guys made DeSoto what it is today. Anyway, I came to DeSoto and I went to Chrysler during '54. And I got there in time, the 300 was already decided and already building. And in February of '55, Bob Rogers was my boss, said, why don't you go down to Daytona Beach and find out what's going on? Well, I said, well, what's my job? And he says, your job is to just see what's going on and report back. So here I went, I'm paid to go down there to be an observer. I mean, it was a wonderful assignment. So then in '56, I went in '56 is when this happened, when Carl Kiefer. I didn't have to do anything except just stand on the top of Carl's truck and watch the cars run in the races and find a seat to watch them run on the flying mile. And then, and in fact, I was there in '57, and then in '57, my boss, Bob Rogers, said, why don't you go down and see what you could do to help them?
Okay.
I'm closer. I'm not an observer, I'm a helper. Help the dealer, Brewster Shaw, help the owners that are down there every year in Chrysler 300. Do what you can. So I went down, and that's exactly what I did.
Okay.
And we were great, but we were successful. We had the problem that year of, it's like pushing a box through the air with the open end forward, you know, because we had the front of all our cars looked like the front of a box. They were, aerodynamically, they were terrible. But anyway, in '58 we did the same cars, and '59 did the same cars, pretty much same design. And we were winning in our class, but we weren't winning overall. Pontiacs were beating us. And that was terrible because here we were with the top displacement, most expensive car, and we were winning in our class, but not overall. So, great disappointment by that, the division. So, at the end of '59 year, about March of '59, Bob Rogers said, your job is to win Daytona overall. That's your job. And you figure out how to do it, and I did. And we had almost a year's lead time, and we decided who the owners were going to be. They bought the cars incidentally, but we decided who they were going to be. Like Greg Ziegler was there every year, but he didn't do a lot. But I called Greg up and I said, Greg, how'd you like a winning car? And he told me afterwards it was like being called and somebody telling you that you won the lottery. So anyway, he bought a car and so on. Brewster Shaw bought 2 cars, Coleman Rose later bought a car and so on. So we ended up with 6 cars, and we went down there and we built the cars in engineering, although we built them with pretty much specified parts. Although we got wonderful, wonderful support from our suppliers. Perfect Circle said, we'll make some low tension piston rings for you. our manufacturing said, we'll build them with the pistons at 1/1000th clearance. The clearance of a piston to a cylinder was 1/2 to 1.5. Said we'll build them at 1.5, and we'll build all the bearings at 2/1000 clearance, whereas they could be 1,000 less than that. So we'll loosely build the engine, low friction. Goodyear got excited about it, said we'll make you some Blue Streak, special Blue Streak low power absorption tires. So we built all these cars, and Bob Roger came up with the idea of putting the quantum Mousson transmission in, because we're probably losing 25 to 30 horsepower in the transmission. So we bought quantum Mousson French 4-speed transmission, rebuilt the cars to get them in, and so away we went. So man, we went click, 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 click. We were 1 through 6, and even the 6th car set a new record. That was faster than the old record. So that was a first-class effort. And the next year, we didn't have to do anything, and Chrysler won overall the next year. We would have run the next year 1, 2, 3, 4. There were 4 cars entered. But the windshield moldings flew off of 3 of them on the downwind leg. I wasn't there that year, and I wouldn't, if I'd been there, I'd have just cried. I mean, I wouldn't have been responsible. But anyway, the windshield moldings came off and the downwind leg, and they wouldn't let them return because the car wasn't complete. One car, Greg Ziegler car, the molding stayed on, and he made both ways, and so we won the, we were best overall. But we should have been 1, 2, 3, 4. And that was the end of the beach runs. So we still have the record.
Now, Vicki Wood, did she, you're not mentioning her name for the 59 or any other years like that. Did she stop running the beach after she set her record? I think she was
Yes,
a 56, over 150 miles an hour one way, right?
Yeah.
As I recall.
Yeah.
And I think it was just a tad under 151. Then did she stop driving the beach anymore?
She didn't drive for us. I don't know if she drove for
Okay.
anybody.
Okay.
But
She stayed in racing, I know, until 63.
Oh well.
And I didn't know if
It wasn't with us.
Okay.
I knew Vicki Wood. I'll tell you how I met her. We built a fuel-injected, short-ran experimental vehicle to run on the beach in 1957. We were going to run it on the beach, and we were going to set a record in the experimental class. And the chief engineer, Ed Mason, and his fuel injection engineer, Bob Graham, was down there with it. My job was I hired Buck Baker, who had driven for Carl Keycaber. I hired Buck Baker for $1,000 to drive Ed and Bob's car down the beach. 2 ways, they were going to drive both ways. So all the cars are lined up, and they go one at a time, and they get a radio call, and it cleared the south finish line, and then the next one goes, and the next one. So we're moving the car forward. Buck doesn't show. And we're only about 2 cars, and Buck still didn't show. So we're desperate. Either Bob Graham's going to have to drive the car, which at that time was frowned at factory guys in racing. That was a bad combination. I'm not sure it is today, but it was then. So we were going to pull the car, or one of us is going to have to drive it. Vicki Wood was there. So I had already made a contract with Buck Baker for $1,000 to make this run up and down. He never showed because the night before he signed with Chevrolet. And he blew us off. He never told us, never showed. So Vicki got in the car. we showed her the car, and we only got about 1 or 2 cars in front of us, and away she goes. And the clutch just blew.
No.
She never made it through the flying mile, even one direction. And afterwards, the analysis showed that it was centrifugal force that the clutch just flew apart.
This is a Pont de Mousson?
So,
No,
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 Morgan back.
57.
It was a torque flight?
No, this is 57. This is
Yeah.
The clutch.
Okay,
the
so what
transmission,
trans,
okay.
3 speed.
But the clutch disc,
okay.
the part that you put in.
Was this a
between the-
factory 3-speed transmission or what?
It's factory 3-speed, right?
Gotcha, okay,
In
okay,
other words,
yeah.
no full throttle in first or second gear, you know.
Why?
You don't hit full throttle until you get into high, direct drive. Anyway, Borgenbeck, who built the clutch, said their estimation was the clutch hit 10,000 RPM. I don't know that that's true, but we never blamed it on Vicki. I think no matter who was in the driver's seat, the clutch would have come apart. So we don't know what happened. But the guys that won in that class was Hot Rod Magazine, with their editor driving it.
right.
And he went 159 miles an hour 2 ways, and we didn't ever beat that anyway. But anyway, Vicki is still alive.
Well, I know, we tried to see, I don't know if you're aware of this, but we tried to see if we could get her to show up here today. She has recently moved. We got notice, maybe you caught that on the forum, on the 300 Club forum, but she recently chose to move from Florida back to Michigan.
Oh,
She's going to live with a daughter, as I understand it, or a daughter is here to take care of her. She's out in the Detroit area somewhere,
well,
and we made contact with her to see if there was any chance she could show up here today, and she's 99.
I was going to say, she's older than I am.
Yeah, a lot older, a lot older, yeah. But at any rate, she was pleased to get our invitation. She said that she was literally too busy with her move from Florida to Michigan right now to be here. If it was the end of September, she says I could have made it, but not right now. So she said, but if you have a future event, please invite me.
Did you talk to her?
I did not talk to her. That's the word from Josh Ackerman, who is in LA, somewhere around LA. He owns apparently that car that she set the record in, as I understand it. So he is in regular contact with her. She was hospitalized. He says, I called her every day when she was in the hospital. And he said, and now she's not in the hospital, but I still talk to her every other week.
If I ever see her again, I'm going to ask her, Vicki, how much did I pay you? Because I can't remember. I know that I don't even think I told her then. We paid Buck $1,000.
Okay,
And he didn't show.
okay.
But I doubt we paid her $1,000.
Well,
Very nice lady.
She might say you never paid me.
yeah, you still owe me.
Right.
I don't know, I thought it would really be neat if she could be
She
here
lived
today.
at Barefoot Bay,
Okay,
as the name of the community. She's
Yeah.
about halfway between Vero Beach and Melbourne.
oh, okay.
And I was going to have somebody from the Walter B. Chrysler Club was arranging a luncheon between Vicki and myself and this person. But either one of somebody couldn't make it, so it got canceled.
Well, I still think it wouldn't be hard to pull it together for you and Vicki to get together. I know you're a married man, but I still think you ought to
But
be together.
you wouldn't even be able to get us down there to the lake.
Well, I think she was driving until a year or so ago. I think they finally
Was she
just
still
pulled
driving?
I think they just pulled her license in the last year, is what I had heard.
So apparently she drove it right up until recently.